Hello everyone. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking with you today on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I thank them for having cared for these lands and waters since time out of mind, and also acknowledge those of the lands from where you are joining us today. I look forward to being a respectful contributor to such histories as I begin my work as a landscape architect. In addition, I would like to express my gratitude to the many who have supported me through this project. I present my proposal, #NoMoreLonely, building community with 1 trillion trees, a project resulting from a desire to apply my newly acquired knowledge and skills with intentional purpose to particular social and ecological problems. In addition, especially during this lengthy period of virtual learning, I have explored design ideas while progressing my own representation style. I have prepared my illustrations using analog drawing, leaning on design software for technical scale and precision. An alarming, life-threatening crisis is expanding in our cities: loneliness. It is as potent a cause of early death as smoking 15 cigarettes a day and can be twice as deadly as obesity. By 2050, the United Nations projects 2/3 of our global population will be urban dwellers, so we might expect this loneliness epidemic to intensify. In the meantime, the World Economic Forum, like other organizations, recently announced a campaign to grow, restore, and conserve 1 trillion trees around the world to combat our planet's climate crisis. While considering how landscape design might support place relationship building, and in the context of the global tree planting demands, I've been interested in leveraging the symbiotic relationship between people and trees in this context of growing loneliness, how they each flourish through social connections and community, and how they provide grounding or a sense of harmony through care, memory, or magnificence. In recent surveys, the Vancouver Foundation was shocked to find the #1 social issue in this city to be isolation and loneliness. Our younger adult generations, 18 to 35, are the loneliest, together with those who are not employed or with the lowest levels of household income. These findings align with similar research worldwide. The majority of analysis undertaken on population loneliness is focused on the baby boomer generation and older, with little attention given to the challenges of our younger adults. A recent survey found that 60% of millennials who find it difficult to make friends say it is because they are shy, while around a quarter say they don't have hobbies that facilitate friendships, and another quarter say they feel they don't really need friends. Millennials, and even more so Gen Z, are homebodies, with at least 1/3 of their spare time spent watching films or TV. However, they are focused on their mental wellness, with their top activities being exercise, yoga or meditation, and reading, all of which can be done outdoors. I have 2 main objectives: to address the growing crisis of loneliness in our cities while addressing greater design intention in tree planting in our city streets and neighbourhoods. I want to achieve these by aiding the creation of spaces in close proximity to people's homes, with opportunities for people to connect with one another while going about their daily activities, involving the community in their design and long-term stewardship, reflecting or retaining elements of local culture or social needs, leveraging native tree and plant species, and enhancing ecosystem services and habitats. I've been inspired and motivated by precedents in 3 areas. The first, identifying the types of places I could design which either encourage people to get outdoors, are easily stumbled upon as soon as they do leave, or entice them through volunteering or another activity, like wellness or a new hobby. The City Futures Research Centre in Australia recently produced this simple places framework to illuminate the ways in which place strengthens community, emphasising how such spaces across the urban fabric, integrating each of these factors, are a crucial component of a healthy city. My second precedent responds to loneliness in the landscape. The UK government appointed the world's first Minister for Loneliness in 2018 and has since developed multiple cross-departmental policies to tackle this social concern. There has been significant success and investment in pocket park initiatives in London and beyond, and I'm curious about such places and why people might naturally be drawn to them regularly, and especially if on their own street. The third precedent considers how communities engage in their urban forest creation and care. Outcomes from research on Europe's neighbourhoods, like UBC's CALB Citizens Toolkit, the growing attention to community stewardship by new urban tiny forests, and addressing the imbalance of urban green infrastructure through equitable street tree planting. Randy Hester argues that a neighbourhood space needs to be the product of a genuine community development process to be successful. I've started to think about a collective stewardship approach, which starts with an expression of interest from a volunteer group to work with the city and other public or private sponsors to help design, build, grow and care for a new setting. Such an approach is critical for the long-term health and care of neighbourhood public spaces. I have developed a curbing loneliness two-dimensional model for thinking about modes of engagement with spaces which can be utilised when designing, and given that I care about loneliness, how such spaces might help to ameliorate these experiences. There is a social dimension, ways in which you can use a space on your own, solo, or shared with others, and a temporal dimension, ways in which we can design spaces to enable contact in a fortuitous way, by chance, or to encourage planned activities. I have illustrated some of these features in the design of my selected sites. The tree is the protagonist in my design imaginations, given my earlier musings on symbiotic relationships, the multiple environmental, biophilic, and social benefits they bring, and the fact that we have to figure out an effective means to plant and care for 1 trillion new trees, especially in our ever-densifying cities. Vancouver is renowned for its springtime cherry blossom festival, display of maple tree fall colours, and magnificence of native old growth forest evergreens. But we need to introduce greater diversification in our urban canopy and the spaces in which we plant our trees as we witness and project the impact of climate change in the region. The city is developing an urban forestry management standards document to cover best practices, including preferred species, to be applied by all allied departments citywide. In the meantime, I have developed my own priority listing of species, native and non-native, anticipated to tolerate a range of conditions and sites under future climate scenarios, comparing the latest City of Vancouver street tree guidelines and Metro Vancouver urban tree list. Additionally, I have been progressing my own representations of a selection of these trees from my earliest sketches to the current iterations, as I have explored the unique features and experiential qualities of these beings. These are my latest illustrations of a diverse sample of small, medium, and large specimens from my priority listing. I have used these across the different ideas I propose today. I have imagined my intervention at 3 different scales. The smallest size is the parklet. Through the COVID-19 pandemic, the parklet, about the size of 2 parking spaces, has become extremely popular, with cities now electing for many to be permanent expansions of their public spaces. The next scale is the grove, varying in size, but equivalent to about 3/4 the size of a tennis court. And the third scale, the mini forest, no bigger than the full size of a court. I have chosen 3 different neighbourhoods in the city in which to illustrate my proposals. I used 2016 census data to identify the concentration of the loneliest groups highlighted earlier by the Vancouver Foundation, combined with the priorities in the Vancouver Urban Forest Strategy, which is a goal to increase the city's average tree canopy cover from 23% to 30% by 2050. The first neighbourhood is downtown. It has the largest number of 25 to 34-year-olds, and a canopy cover of only 8%. The second is Strathcona, with only a 6% tree canopy, and a population with an overwhelming proportion of very low-income households. The third is Renfrew Collingwood, which has the highest number of households across all 3 income categories of concern, the largest number of 18 to 24-year-olds, and a 10% tree canopy cover. Each neighbourhood also represents a vastly different residential form. To pick out sites for my study, I analysed maps I created for each neighbourhood to identify locations highlighted in the blue zones here. Although a subjective radius, these represent areas not within a 3-minute walk of an existing city park, the red blocks on the maps. Said differently, it takes 3 minutes for someone living in these zones to get from their doorstep to a local park. Like a flaneur exploring these neighbourhoods, I've observed common tree planting patterns on our streets, very straight lines along the edge of the sidewalk, restricted tree pits for single tree planting, and surrounding surfaces for the most part impervious. This is especially so in the downtown neighbourhood. While so many streets in the downtown east side area of Strathcona only have a single street tree, or where disused lots are barren of any canopy. And while most of my observed patterns continue, surfaces of expansive front yard lawns become apparent as I've travelled into our more suburban neighbourhoods. For downtown, with densely populated residential towers and limited open space, I selected the intersection of Hornby and Helpkin Streets for the first of my design interventions, the parklet. Tree buddies on Hornby would combine two parklets to add canopy adjacent to the existing line of trees and introduce additional greenery on the street, taking care to safely integrate the extensive bikeway system traversing this intersection. Moving away from the monoculture of the existing plantings, I would introduce tree species diversity, creating variable levels of shade and interest, and plant an under canopy to help increase fauna and flora habitats. Leveraging the curbing loneliness model I introduced earlier, and illustrated in the movement lines here, the design accommodates spaces for up to 11 people, assuming a 2-meter bubble space, for individuals to engage in solo activities like working out or resting in the dappled shade of a ginkgo biloba tree, for friends to hang out, or acquaintances to gather by chance over a break from their workplaces. I have considered soil volume needs to encourage mycorrhizal networks for tree communities through the installation of soil cells across the parklet. For stormwater runoff, the slopes across this city block is less than 1 meter, but is gradual down the north to south flow of this stretch of Hornby Street. The soil cells would integrate rainwater capture and distribution and be topped by permeable surfaces like porous asphalt or concrete for that portion of the bike lane, and crushed gravel for the parklet path. I include 2 seating options, either stone boulders, sourced locally or found on site during project build, or timber-topped gabion seating. The gabion containers again filled with local or site-sourced stone. An additional reason for my gabion selection for walls and seating is that these can provide potential habitat for small mammals and birds, as well as space for plant life. I feel it's important that the same design elements should be used for any of my interventions across the city to create consistency and continuity of these projects regardless of location and community. However, there can be flexibility depending on budget and preference for each site project. For example, in fill materials to be used for the gabions, the timber and finishing for the seating, and the quality of boulder selection. This small site entertains the idea that we could benefit from biophilic qualities of a large urban park right on our doorstep, a shared front yard, so to speak, or during a break from working or running an errand. Although tiny, it provides a pocket in the city for tree communities to grow, and with the multiplication of these interventions, an opportunity to create a stepping stone corridor of small habitat patches across the dense urban matrix. Shifting to Strathcona, I had noted the stark absence of canopy across much of the area, especially in the downtown east side neighbourhood. While exploring the streets, I identified 2 sites which sit on the north and south side of Glen Drive, intersecting East Hastings Street and adjacent to a railway track. They are both empty lots owned by the city and are surrounded by a mix of high-density apartment buildings, older single or multi-family homes, low-rise commercial buildings, and open parking lots. My initial inclination for the site on the south side of Glen Drive was for a grouping of urban mini-forests. However, through my design iterations, I realized another 4th typology of intervention inspired by 2 elements. I was struck by the intense lattice work of overhead wiring, and I had read several articles of concern about the sourcing of trillions of trees for the new goals set out by the World Economic Forum and others. In the spirit of community enterprise and creating an opportunity for volunteer groups to produce their own trees for planting across the neighbourhood, the new tree nursery on the south side of Glen Drive would see a neighbourhood group partner with the city and commercial nurseries to prepare the land and manage tree growth. I explored the multi-year cycle of seed planting through young tree development and the options for tree line design, accounting for the existing slope on the site. I can imagine every neighbourhood across the city establishing their own such nursery to help generate new and diverse tree life into their local parklets and groves, build stronger community ownership, stewardship, and pride of street life, and develop their own funding sources through this local enterprise. This place could offer up multiple opportunities for people to engage in activities that might help soothe social isolation and loneliness feelings. I have applied movement lines to illustrate some, using my curbing loneliness model, ranging from the solo experience of finding respite in the shade of juvenile trees, perhaps not quite forest bathing, to plan volunteering for the care of the saplings or to graduate them onto other neighbourhood projects. The changes on this site, drawn in these section drawings, leap forward beyond 50 years to emphasise the magnificence of the Quercus garryani selected for permanent growth on the site, and how such a species can become an iconic marker for a community. With the idea of a nursery or tree creche, as I playfully term it, I felt the need to introduce two, not just one potential mother tree, in the spirit of also helping to ameliorate the loneliness of single trees. Across to the north side of Glen Drive, a new tree stand will celebrate diversity of community. As I noted earlier when speaking to the idea of a collective stewardship programme, I acknowledge that this neighbourhood has many social challenges, that any design would need significant engagement and ownership of local groups, and therefore might actually take on a form starkly different to the ideas I present today. Mirroring the social diversity of the neighbourhood, my proposal aggregates variable characters of different tree groves, bringing groups of species into this neighbourhood place, enhancing biodiversity and habitat for its non-human agents as well as its people. The North Glen Grove offers multiple opportunities for rest, play, restoration, and an additional form of community building for the growing number of young adult residents and existing workers in the area. The place can contribute to helping those who experience loneliness. And again, I've mapped my curbing loneliness model modes of engagement, ranging from planned tree care classes or membership of a fruit picking club to solo restorative breaks or happen chance meetings for those working lonely. While spending time walking the streets of Strathcona, I noticed a number of urban agricultural lots, so I've located a small orchard of apple, pear, or plum trees at the higher and sunnier east end of the site. My proposed regrading of this site preserves the existing slope, starting from the intersection of Glen Drive and East Hastings Street, but incorporates grade change elements intended to enhance experience with the flow of pathways and places to pause, manage stormwater, including a swale at the lower west end, and incorporate universal design for use of the groves by all. I can imagine the combination of the South Glen Nursery and these North Glen Groves forming a new focus of collective stewardship, conservation, and system of urban forestry for the neighbourhood, becoming a new green hub where young adults and others are volunteering, spending time, creating community, and a fresh enterprise. My third neighbourhood, Renfrew Collingwood, is a suburban area of mostly single-family homes and large expanses of garden lawns. I explored an area encircled by small city parks, including John Hendry Park and Renfrew Ravine Parks. I chose a short stretch along Slocum Street, a busy road with heavy traffic, and where it intersects with 25th Avenue, which has an existing east-west street tree alley. Much of the space fronting Slocum Street from the homes is lawn, creating multiple sites on which my fourth typology could be established in this neighbourhood. I have zoomed in on a single corner lot to illustrate the design for one urban mini forest. For a landscape where trees are allowed to create their own succession paths at a comparatively fast pace in an urban environment, where only native species are used and where biodiversity can be expansive. Trees the boss would require a combination of local neighbourhood and city stewardship, plus explicit support and partnership with the property owner to embark on a multi-year project, initially collecting and germinating seeds from a local indigenous forest, then preparing the terrain before acclimating and planting seedlings, followed by care and maintenance for initial establishment period over 3 years, including early and careful introduction of native under canopy shrubs. The young mini forest can then be left to its own laws of synchronicity and cooperation. During my walks, I saw very few pedestrians pausing on the streets. There weren't really any places for them to stop, rest, or meet. Depicted through my curbing loneliness model activity lines here, as new communities start to be nourished through the formation of the mini forest, this place would become an attraction of planned activity for volunteers and neighbourhood connoisseurs, as a place to share work, or for solo trips to take or leave a book at the mini library. For this particular site, there is minimal grading alteration, although the mini forest will better manage runoff from the sidewalk towards the garden wall and house, as stormwater infiltration will improve compared to the existing lawn condition. For a property owner and local neighbourhood, these maturing mini forests bring a myriad of benefits, mitigating street and traffic noise, reducing air pollution, and blocking winds. For the local resident, they can provide brief moments of respite, calming and beautiful, regardless of whether to be alone or to be with others. My 4 different interventions could be established as a network of parklet, nursery, grove, and mini forest nodes to create a critical patchwork of urban forestation and rewilding through our city greenways. They can engage the community through a multitude of possible activities to help ameliorate experiences of social isolation and loneliness, and help to grow and protect our urban forest. My proposals aim to bring an additional perspective to how landscape architects approach the design of spaces in the urban environment through addressing a growing social crisis. I recognise that loneliness is only one of many social challenges we face as we consider the contributions we make to society and to the histories of these lands. And as we play our part in how trillions of new trees are to be planted in and around our cities, we should consider how we have contributed to the loneliness of urban trees in the past. My designs attempt to emphasise how we can build upon the symbiotic relationship we have with them as we consider ameliorating the consequences of loneliness for both. Thank you for your attention, and I would appreciate your feedback and recommendations on my